The summer of 2001 in the quiet town of Redford, Nebraska, had begun like any other. Long stretches of cornfields shimmered under the afternoon sun, and the streets were mostly empty, except for the occasional truck hauling grain or kids riding bicycles along the cracked sidewalks. On July 12th, 19-year-old Natalie Crawford left her part-time shift at Miller's Grocery just after 7:15 p.m., her backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, humming along to a local radio station. Neighbors would later recall seeing her jogging lightly down Elm Street toward her home, a routine she had maintained since starting the summer job. That evening, however, Natalie would never make it back. Redford police received the first reports of her disappearance around 9:30 p.m., when her mother, Linda Crawford, called after Natalie failed to answer her cell phone. At first, investigators treated the case as a potential runaway. Natalie was a responsible young woman, but known to occasionally skip meals or disappear briefly to visit friends without notice. By midnight, the assumption of a runaway had evaporated as searches by family and neighbors turned up nothing. Her backpack, shoes, and water bottle were gone, leaving no immediate clues as to her whereabouts. The investigation was immediate but complicated. Elm Street, where Natalie had been last seen, was flanked by open fields and sparse housing. Local residents offered what little they could. An old man who walked his dog had noticed a blue pickup idling nearby, its driver staring toward the fields. A teenager passing by reported hearing a muffled shout, but couldn't identify anyone. Redford police documented every tip and piece of evidence meticulously, including tire tracks in the dirt shoulder and footprints leading toward an abandoned barn a mile from Natalie's home. Yet despite the early collection of evidence, hair fibers, partial fingerprints, and a cigarette butt found near the barn, technology in 2001 limited investigators' ability to extract anything definitive. Over the next several weeks, the town organized search parties. Hundreds of volunteers combed the cornfields, drainage ditches, and wooded areas, while helicopters from the state police conducted aerial sweeps. Every lead was exhausted, from questioning local men who drove pickups matching the witness descriptions to tracking calls from nearby towns and examining any potential connections to past crimes. Nothing yielded answers. The case soon stagnated, and as the summer faded, Natalie Crawford's disappearance became a haunting memory for Redford. Linda Crawford refused to give up. She maintained Natalie's room as it had been, a quiet shrine of hope. Posters with Natalie's photo were displayed in local stores and gas stations. Her parents would drive the streets repeatedly, knocking on doors, speaking to anyone who might have seen something. Local news outlets aired special segments featuring her photograph and details of her last known movements, generating dozens of tips, yet none led to resolution. As months turned into years, the case moved into what the Redford Police Department termed cold status, evidence carefully boxed and stored, waiting for advances in forensic science. In 2001, one of the most overlooked pieces of evidence was a cigarette butt discovered near the abandoned barn. At the time, DNA extraction was limited, and though samples were collected, they were insufficient for a conclusive match against known offenders. The cigarette remained sealed in the Redford evidence locker for nearly 2 decades. By 2019, however, forensic technology had transformed. Techniques like massively parallel sequencing and forensic genetic genealogy allowed investigators to develop DNA profiles from samples previously considered unusable. When the Nebraska State Police Cold Case Unit revisited Natalie's file, her cigarette butt was immediately flagged for testing. The breakthrough began in March 2020. Forensic specialists successfully extracted a male DNA profile from the cigarette. It did not match any profiles in the state or national criminal databases, suggesting that the individual had no prior convictions requiring DNA submission. Investigators then employed forensic genetic genealogy, searching commercial genealogy databases for familial connections. Slowly, The process narrowed potential suspects to a handful of men residing in southwestern Nebraska. Detective Laura Hastings, assigned to the case, described the painstaking process in a later interview. "We weren't just looking for a match," she said. "We were reconstructing a family tree in reverse, examining distant cousins, tracing branches, and methodically narrowing until we found someone whose DNA pointed directly to Natalie's disappearance. The investigation required discrete collection of DNA samples from public items, such as discarded cups and cigarette butts, to avoid alerting suspects. By August 2020, investigators had narrowed the suspect to 47-year-old Simon Fletcher, a longtime Redford resident, known for his quiet demeanor and involvement in local volunteer organizations. Fletcher had no prior criminal record and was generally regarded as a model community member. He had tutored children at the library, volunteered at the fire department, and participated in local charity events. This, as Detective Hastings later explained, made him both a difficult and crucial figure to investigate, as the contrast between public persona and private actions was stark. The evidence was compelling. DNA from the cigarette butt matched Fletcher with near certainty, and further forensic testing revealed trace fibers on Natalie's backpack that aligned with fabrics found in Fletcher's vehicle. Historical cell phone records, recovered and reconstructed from archives, placed Fletcher near the abandoned barn at the time of Natalie's disappearance. Investigators obtained a search warrant, and a thorough examination of his property revealed additional corroborating evidence, including a set of items that had belonged to Natalie, preserved and hidden. On October 15, 2020, Redford police executed the arrest. Fletcher was taken into custody without incident, his neighbors and community in shock. To them, Fletcher was a trusted figure, someone who had never inspired suspicion. News of the arrest spread quickly, prompting national media coverage, given the dramatic use of forensic genealogy to solve a 2-decade-old cold case. The Crawford family, after nearly 20 years of uncertainty, finally received confirmation of the man responsible for their daughter's disappearance. While nothing could undo the trauma, the arrest provided a measure of relief. Detective Hastings emphasized that the resolution demonstrated both the importance of preserving evidence and the power of evolving forensic science. "This case shows that time doesn't erase truth," she said. "DNA can speak decades later, giving families the answers they deserve." Fletcher's trial began in early 2021. Prosecutors presented a meticulous reconstruction of events, combining archival evidence from 2001 with the new DNA findings, cell phone analysis, and recovered personal items. The defense attempted to cast doubt on the forensic genealogy methods, arguing that the DNA could have been contaminated over time. However, experts testified on the robustness of modern DNA extraction techniques, the chain of custody, and the reproducibility of results. The jury ultimately found Fletcher guilty of abduction and murder, sentencing him to life imprisonment without parole. In Redford, the community began the slow process of healing. Memorials were held in Natalie's honor, scholarships were established in her name, and awareness campaigns focused on missing persons were implemented in local schools. The case became a model for other cold case investigations across Nebraska and the Midwest, demonstrating the potential of combining preserved evidence with cutting-edge forensic technology. For the Crawford family, the resolution was bittersweet. While justice had been served, the loss of Natalie remained deeply felt. Linda Crawford reflected on the years of waiting, emphasizing the importance of persistence. "We never stopped believing that someone would find the truth," she said. Natalie's story proves that even after decades, answers can come, and families can finally know what happened to their loved ones. The Nebraska 2001 cold case serves as a testament to the intersection of patience, perseverance, and science. It highlights the profound impact of evidence preservation, the revolutionary potential of forensic genetic genealogy, and the unwavering determination of both law enforcement and families to seek truth. Natalie Crawford's legacy, though tragically cut short, endures. A reminder that even in the quietest towns, justice eventually finds a way. The summer heat had passed, but the memory of Natalie Crawford's disappearance remained vivid in Redford. By 2002, her case had become one of the town's quiet, unspoken tragedies. Residents still whispered about the blue pickup spotted near Elm Street that fateful night, and older teenagers remembered the day the streets had been flooded with search parties. Even though 2 decades had passed, Natalie's name lingered in every conversation about safety, trust, and the fragility of life in a small town. The Crawford family refused to let the case fade into the shadows of bureaucracy. Linda and Mark Crawford maintained their daughter's room, keeping her belongings carefully arranged, as though Natalie might walk back through the door any moment. Each year, on July 12th, they placed fresh flowers on the porch and drove to the edge of town to search the cornfields, retracing the route Natalie had taken that evening. Community vigils were organized annually. Drawing neighbors, and candlelight flickered against the evening corn, illuminating faces lined with grief and hope. In 2010, advances in forensic science began changing the possibilities for cold cases like Natalie's. The Nebraska State Police had invested in a modern laboratory capable of DNA profiling from minute or degraded samples. The cigarette butt found near the abandoned barn, once considered insufficient for analysis, became a focal point. With new, massively parallel sequencing techniques, investigators could extract genetic information from just a few skin cells left on an object years earlier. Forensic specialists began running tests, carefully documenting each step to preserve the integrity of the evidence. By 2015, the lab had succeeded in developing a partial male DNA profile from the cigarette. While the profile did not match any known offenders in state or federal databases, it represented the first tangible lead in nearly 15 years. Investigators began considering the use of forensic genetic genealogy, a method that had recently solved notorious cases such as the Golden State Killer. The approach was meticulous. Genealogists built family trees based on the DNA, searching for distant cousins, analyzing inheritance patterns, and narrowing down the suspect pool without alerting potential targets. Detective Laura Hastings, who had taken over the cold case unit in Redford, coordinated the project. "We knew the DNA alone wouldn't give us the full picture," she explained later. "We had to combine it with historical evidence, witness statements, and the context of the town to identify someone who could be responsible." The process involved discreetly collecting additional DNA samples from everyday objects: a coffee cup left at a library, a discarded soda can at a community baseball field, to compare against the profile developed from the cigarette. It was painstaking work, often requiring months to confirm matches and verify family connections. By early 2018, the investigation had narrowed significantly. A handful of individuals emerged as possible suspects, all men with ties to Redford and its surrounding communities. One name stood out: Simon Fletcher, a 47-year-old man who had lived in Redford his entire life. Fletcher was known for his quiet demeanor and involvement in community organizations. He volunteered at the local library, tutored children, and assisted with charity events. To the outside world he appeared harmless, even benevolent, but the forensic evidence told a different story. DNA from discarded items confirmed Fletcher was the source of the male DNA profile extracted from Natalie's cigarette butt, providing a crucial link that had eluded investigators for nearly 2 decades. Surveillance and further investigation revealed additional corroborating evidence. Items belonging to Natalie, carefully preserved and hidden, were discovered on Fletcher's property. Historical cell phone records placed him near the abandoned barn at the time of Natalie's disappearance. Fiber analysis connected clothing, found in his vehicle to Natalie's backpack. Each piece of evidence reinforced the conclusion that Fletcher had been responsible for the abduction and murder. Despite the passage of nearly 20 years, on August 10, 2018, Redford police executed a search warrant at Fletcher's residence. The operation was discreet but thorough, carried out with a combination of local officers and state forensic specialists. Inside the home, authorities recovered items that had belonged to Natalie, as well as journals and notes documenting his interactions with the town over the years. Investigators noted that Fletcher had maintained his public persona as a helpful, community-minded citizen while concealing the truth about that night in July 2001. The contrast was chilling. Fletcher was arrested without incident. Local news spread rapidly, with reporters and television crews capturing the shock of a town that had long trusted him. Residents struggled to reconcile the man they knew with the crimes he had committed. Longtime neighbors, some of whom had interacted with Fletcher daily, expressed disbelief. Many had accepted his volunteer work, tutoring, and public involvement at face value, unaware that he had spent decades hiding a dark secret. The Crawford family, after years of uncertainty, finally had confirmation that justice was within reach. For Linda and Mark Crawford, the arrest brought a mixture of relief and sorrow. They finally knew the man responsible for their daughter's disappearance, but the years of waiting and uncertainty had left deep scars. Community support poured in, with local churches, schools, and neighbors rallying to assist the family and provide counseling for those affected. As the trial approached, forensic evidence became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. The DNA from the cigarette butt, corroborated by items recovered from Fletcher's property, fibers analysis, and historical cell phone data, formed an unbroken chain linking him to Natalie's disappearance. Prosecutors meticulously reconstructed the events of that evening, presenting both modern and archival evidence to establish a clear timeline. Witnesses who had previously reported seeing a blue pickup near Elm Street provided testimony, confirming Fletcher's presence in the area, further reinforcing the case. The trial itself began in early 2019. Redford, a small town accustomed to quiet routines, found itself gripped by national media coverage. Residents filled the courtroom, with standing room only in some sections, while overflow areas accommodated those eager to witness justice finally being served. Prosecutors presented a detailed account of Fletcher's actions, combining 2 decades of investigative work with the latest forensic technology. The defense sought to question the integrity of the evidence, particularly the DNA testing and genealogical methods, but expert testimony validated the accuracy and reliability of these techniques. As the proceedings unfolded, the emotional weight of the case became evident. Members of Natalie's family, long haunted by uncertainty, attended each day, listening to testimony that recounted details of her last known moments and the painstaking work that had ultimately identified her abductor. The courtroom often fell silent as the story of Natalie's final night, the decades of waiting, and the revelation of Fletcher's actions were recounted with both precision and emotion. Throughout the trial, experts emphasized the significance of preserved evidence. Without the cigarette butt and meticulous record-keeping from 2001, the case may have remained unsolved indefinitely. Detective Hastings highlighted this point in her testimony. Evidence can speak decades later. It doesn't forget. It waits patiently for the technology and persistence necessary to tell the truth. The jury deliberated for several days, weighing nearly 20 years of investigative work, forensic evidence, and testimony from the community. Ultimately, Fletcher was found guilty of abduction and murder. The sentencing reflected the gravity of the crime, with life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For the residents of Redford, the verdict marked the end of a long and painful chapter, though the emotional impact of the case would resonate for years. In the wake of the conviction, Redford began a slow process of healing. Memorials and scholarships were established in Natalie's name, focusing on missing persons awareness and safety education. Her case became a reference point for other cold cases in Nebraska, demonstrating the power of forensic genetic genealogy and the importance of preserving evidence. Law enforcement agencies statewide adopted similar methods, inspired by the resolution of Natalie Crawford's disappearance. The Crawford family, while still mourning the loss of their daughter, found a measure of peace in the knowledge that the man responsible had been held accountable. Linda Crawford emphasized the importance of perseverance and hope. "We never gave up, even when it felt impossible." Natalie's story proves that truth can prevail, no matter how many years pass. Families waiting for answers can find them if we don't stop fighting. Through this case, the town of Redford learned the complexity of trust, the dangers of appearances, and the importance of vigilance. Even in a community where everyone knows everyone, darkness can hide behind familiarity. Yet the persistence of law enforcement, combined with technological advancements, can shine a light on that darkness, revealing the truth and providing justice, no matter how much time has passed. Natalie Crawford's story remains a testament to resilience, the enduring pursuit of justice, and the capacity of science to bring closure to families who have waited decades for answers. Her memory continues to inspire initiatives for missing persons, cold case investigations, and community education, ensuring that even when tragedy strikes, hope and justice remain possible. The summer of 2019 in Redford felt heavier than usual. Though Simon Fletcher had been convicted, the ripples of his actions stretched far beyond the courtroom. The town still grappled with the shock that someone so integrated into daily life could hide such a dark secret. Schools, libraries, and community centers initiated programs to help residents, particularly children, process the trauma of realizing that appearances can be deceiving. Psychologists spoke about community betrayal trauma, a term few had heard before, but everyone now understood intimately. In the Crawford household, silence had returned, though it was no longer heavy with uncertainty. Instead, the air carried the quiet, enduring sorrow of remembrance and the beginnings of healing. Linda and Mark Crawford organized a private ceremony to commemorate Natalie's life. Close friends and family gathered on the edge of Elm Street, combed the cornfields for their missing daughter. Candles flickered in the evening breeze, reflecting in teary eyes. They read aloud excerpts from Natalie's diary, her dreams and observations, keeping her voice alive in the community. Law enforcement in Nebraska marked the case as a milestone. The Nebraska State Police Cold Case Unit held a debriefing analyzing what lessons could be learned. Detective Laura Hastings emphasized the importance of preserving evidence meticulously. The cigarette butt, once dismissed as irrelevant, had held the key for nearly 2 decades. This case shows that patience, persistence, and the advancement of technology can bring justice, even after years of uncertainty, Hastings stated. Officers examined other unsolved cases, applying similar forensic genealogy techniques to investigate further cold cases across the state. In the courtroom, Fletcher's conviction left lingering questions about why he had been able to maintain such a facade for so long. Prosecutors uncovered personal records showing Fletcher's calculated efforts to embed himself in community life, attending vigils for Natalie, volunteering for charity events, and maintaining relationships with her family. Psychologists who studied his behavior later described it as a predatory masquerade, a combination of obsession and manipulation designed to hide the crime and gain control over the emotional lives of his victims' loved ones. Despite the conviction, the town's recovery was slow. Parents remained cautious, watching their children's activities and questioning the reliability of people they had once trusted implicitly. Redford schools introduced educational programs on personal safety, situational awareness, and the importance of reporting suspicious behavior. The libraries and community centers became hubs for discussions about mental health, trauma, and vigilance, Slowly, over months and years, the initial shock began to evolve into a more grounded understanding. Darkness can hide in plain sight, but truth has a way of emerging no matter how long it takes. Memorials honoring Natalie Crawford were established, reflecting the multifaceted life she could have had. The Redford Historical Society helped create a permanent display at the town's community center, featuring photographs, diary excerpts, and accounts of her aspirations. A scholarship was launched in her name, aimed at supporting students pursuing careers in social work, forensic science, or community safety. Every year, young residents who received the scholarship were encouraged to contribute projects that raised awareness about missing persons and cold cases, turning tragedy into proactive community engagement. The forensic breakthroughs in the Crawford case inspired law enforcement agencies nationwide. Detectives, prosecutors, and forensic genealogists began sharing methods, developing best practices for investigating decades-old cases with minimal physical evidence. The case became part of academic courses in criminal justice programs, illustrating the power of combining traditional investigative work with cutting-edge DNA technology. Detective Hastings herself was invited to speak at national conferences, emphasizing the necessity of meticulous documentation, the ethical considerations of genetic genealogy, and the emotional resilience required to work on long unsolved cases. Meanwhile, the Crawford family found a way to reclaim aspects of their lives. Linda Crawford, in particular, became a vocal advocate for families of missing persons. She offered guidance and support to those struggling with unresolved disappearances, sharing her experience while emphasizing hope and patience. Mark Crawford returned to teaching, incorporating discussions about civic responsibility, personal safety, and empathy into his lessons, ensuring that Natalie's story informed and protected future generations. Simon Fletcher remained incarcerated, isolated from the community he had once manipulated. Prison psychologists documented his behavior during intake and over the years, noting minimal remorse and a pattern of calculated rationalization. While he would never face public forgiveness, the containment of his threat restored a sense of safety to Redford. The town began to move forward, integrating lessons from Natalie's case into policies, education, and everyday life. Redford's local law enforcement also recognized the importance of communication with the public. Following the resolution of Natalie's case, officers implemented annual cold case updates and outreach programs. They encouraged citizens to come forward with tips, reminding everyone that even small details could provide the breakthrough necessary to resolve decades-old mysteries. In many ways, the community itself became an active partner in ensuring that no missing person would be forgotten and that no lead would be overlooked. By 2021, 2 decades after Natalie Crawford vanished, her story had transformed from one of unresolved grief into a catalyst for change. The town celebrated annual memorial walks along Elm Street, now lined with plaques honoring not only Natalie, but other missing individuals in Nebraska, whose cases had been advanced by forensic genealogy. Each walk ended at a community center, where students and citizens shared presentations, artistic interpretations, and educational projects, demonstrating that tragedy could give rise to awareness, action, and collective vigilance. The Crawford family's perspective evolved over time. Linda reflected, "We still grieve every day. Losing Natalie never leaves us. But knowing the person responsible was caught and that our story can help others gives meaning to our struggle. We hope families never have to wait 2 decades for justice." Mark added, "The town learned a hard lesson about trust and appearances. But we also learned about resilience, science, and the unwavering power of community. That knowledge helps us protect the future." For law enforcement, the Nebraska 2001 cold case became a case study in the importance of integrating new technology with old investigative work. The cigarette butt, overlooked for years, had become the critical link to resolution. DNA preservation, archival evidence, witness statements, and forensic genealogy all intersected to finally provide answers. This approach was replicated in several other cold cases, solving mysteries that had haunted families for generations. Redford, once marked by the shadow of Natalie's disappearance, now holds her memory with a mixture of sorrow and reverence. Streets once avoided after dark became avenues of remembrance and awareness. Schools teach students to be vigilant and empathetic. Families communicate openly, understanding that awareness and caution can save lives. The town's collective experience demonstrates both the fragility of trust and the enduring strength of justice when persistence, science, and community converge. Through the Crawford case, the message was clear. No matter how much time passes, evidence retains its voice and truth remains patient. Modern technology, coupled with relentless investigative work, can shine light into even the deepest shadows of unsolved crimes. Natalie Crawford, silenced at 13, finally spoke through science, persistence, and the tireless efforts of those who refused to forget her. Her legacy continues to inspire initiatives across Nebraska and beyond. Cold case units study the methodology used to solve her disappearance, training new generations of detectives in the integration of DNA analysis, forensic genealogy, and community engagement. Educational programs emphasize safety, vigilance, and the importance of reporting suspicious behavior, ensuring that Natalie's story not only provides justice, but also acts as a protective guide for others. Though the town of Redford cannot erase the pain of 2001, it now carries a profound understanding. The combination of human dedication, technological advancement, and unwavering hope can bring closure even after decades. Natalie Crawford's memory persists, her story now one of truth, justice, and the enduring resilience of those left behind. Families of missing persons are reminded that persistence matters, that evidence can survive the passage of time, and that the courage to seek answers can ultimately transform grief into action, awareness, and lasting change. This resolution, decades in the making, serves as a testament to the power of science, community, and determination. Natalie Crawford's case stands as a beacon of hope for families still searching for answers, proving that even the smallest preserved clue, like a cigarette butt, can become the key to unlocking decades of silence and bringing justice to those who have waited far too long.